It's the largest Protestant denomination in the United States. It's called the Southern Baptist Convention. You probably hear things about it. It tends to get in the news a lot, but many people do not know that it is declining, nor do they know the severity of the decline. We're going to look at that in the Church Answers podcast, not only in this podcast, but we're going to do two parts. So we'll give you a link in the show notes to part 2 as we go over part 1 today. As always, thank you, Belay Solutions, for being our sponsor. As I've said many times, it's a joy for Belay to find us people, virtual assistants, virtual bookkeepers. And you've heard me say we've been using Belay a long time at Church Answers. And it has been a great joy to get to know all of the Belay people that we have worked with. If you're interested in finding someone who can be a virtual assistant for you or a virtual bookkeeper, and you don't have to do any of the work, personnel, all of the back-end work, you get Belay Solutions, and you're going to have a great ministry partner. They provided a download called 25 Tasks a Pastor Can Delegate to an Assistant. We encourage you to find that download and to link to it and then download it yourself and share it with others. Okay, let's talk about understanding the decline of the Southern Baptist Convention, and we're going to take 2 parts to do this. This first part may be a little surprising to you because unless you're just someone digging down into the numbers or paying close attention, you may not be seeing some of the things that I am sharing with you. Now, let me say this. It is easy to say the denomination ought to do something when you see a denomination in decline. But we must realize that it's not really denominations that decline. It is the churches within the denomination that decline. So when we're looking at a declining denomination, we are looking at the aggregate of all of the churches in the denomination. This denomination has over 40,000 churches, around 45,000. It is a big denomination and has historically been the largest. For many years, Southern Baptist Convention would say it had 16 million members. Well, it doesn't even have that anymore. We're not going to even deal with membership. That's down almost 2 million. We're going to deal with 3 pieces of data that I think might surprise you. Now, here's what I'm doing. I am comparing the Southern Baptist Convention data of 2022 to 2019. Why are you doing that, Thom? I'm glad I asked myself. The reason I am doing that is 2019 was the last year before COVID. 2020 for many churches was almost we're not open year, or we're not open part of the year. 2021 was a partial recovery. 2022, we began to see some of the full recovery. So from my perspective, one of the best ways to answer the question, how are we doing, is to compare 2019 data, pre-COVID, to 2022 data, the first year, full recovery year after COVID. Again, 2020, a lot of churches closed. 2021, just slowly beginning to reopen and reinstate ministries and people begin to come back. 2022 is the first real recovery year. So we're comparing 2019 to 2022. Okay, let's look at some of these surprises. Again, a denomination of over 14 million people. How many people show up to worship services on a weekend, typically Sunday? In 2019, it was 5.2 million. In 2022, get this, 3.8 million. From 5.2 to 3.8. That is how many are attending, usually on Sunday morning. 5.2 million to 3.8. That is a 27.5% decline. That is a large decline. And for any church, I would just encourage you not to say we are growing, and I'm not trying to be all negative. If you're comparing your 2022 numbers to 2020 or 2021, the real place to begin is how are we doing relative to how we were pre-COVID? 5.3 million to 1.4 million, 27.5% decline. That is in-person worship attendance. We've got a link in the show notes to the blog I wrote about this, and you can see these numbers actually so that if some of these really interest you, you can go look at the black and white that we have written about them at churchanswers.com. Okay, that's one of the surprises. One of the greatest ways that we measure health of a church is small groups, sometimes called Sunday school, sometimes called community groups, house group, small groups, life groups. There's a long list of names that we call these groups. How is the health of the Southern Baptist Convention just from a numerical gauge? In 2019, in-person small groups, average attendance 3.2 million in 2019. Now get this, 2022, average attendance 2.3 million. That is a 900,000 decrease. That is a 27, almost 28% decrease in groups. It's been kind of amazing to me that we've had a lot of talk about this denomination, but no one, I shouldn't say no one, but I'm not seeing much discussion about the 2022 numbers compared to 2019. This is a challenging reality for the churches of the Southern Baptist Convention. Let's do one more. Baptisms. What are baptisms? For Southern Baptists, that is their way of measuring conversions. Conversions, people who were not followers of Christ, who are now following Christ and have committed to membership in that church after they have followed Christ and been baptized. How are those numbers doing? I can remember when the goal was 500,000 decades ago to have 500,000 baptisms in a year. Now, in 2019, it was already down to 235,000. But get this, in 2022, it is down to 180,000. I know that's a lot of numbers, folks. I get it. And I get that numbers aren't everything. I get chastised for, it's not the people in the building, it's the people are the church. I get that, but they gather somewhere. Whether it's under a tree or in a building, they gather somewhere. And what we are seeing here is in-person worship attendance down 27.5%, small groups down 28%, baptisms down 24%. We're seeing these dramatic declines. And this is the reflection of the churches of the Southern Baptist Convention. Now, the question is obviously this: why? Why are the churches of the Southern Baptist Convention declining? And I know that many of you who listen or watch are in other denominations or you're non-denominational. I'm using this primarily because we have clear statistics on it. We're able to provide data that we know will be relatively accurate, and also because we have historical trends. The SBC is not representative of all churches in America or the world for sure, but it is representative of a lot of what is happening in North America. In-person attendance down, in-person small groups down, conversions measured by the Southern Baptist Convention as baptisms. Here are the realities, folks. Now, again, why? Well, I'm going to take part 2 of the Church Answers podcast from this week. We've dropped 3, and this is the second one, and we're going to look at a third one, and we're going to begin to try to answer that question, why? Why are these churches in this denomination declining? Stay tuned for that. The good news is if you want to listen to it or watch it, you don't have to wait. The podcast is already ready for you, and you can just switch right over. We offer these bite-sized bursts so you can get just a little bit of information related to church and church issues at the Church Answers podcast, always sponsored by Belay Solutions, our friends who are providing an immense amount of resources, but particularly in the area of people to come alongside you and be virtual workers in your organization, in your church. Get the download called 25 Tasks a Pastor Can Delegate to an Assistant at belaysolutions.com/Thom Rainer, or look at it in the show notes. Okay, stay tuned for part 2 of this, the next podcast on understanding the decline of the Southern Baptist Convention. I'll see you in that podcast. Hey, folks, this is a PS to our podcast. We got some exciting stuff that we want to offer you absolutely for free. Sam, when you think about predictive factors in a church's growth, if you take out demographics, what are some things that come to mind? Just 2. I mean, don't give me a list of 10. Just 2 or 3 things that come to mind on predictive growth of a church.
Well, evangelism and whether the church is doing it or not.
Bingo.
And then And then I will add, is it an ongoing evangelism emphasis
Double
as well?
bingo, and maybe something about leadership and their commitment to that. So all of the above.
Evangelistic churches have evangelistic pastors. Is
It,
the staff, is the lead pastor doing the work themselves?
we have a free download for you, and it's actually a sheet that you can self-score. You answer 20 questions, anywhere from strongly disagree to strongly agree, and we come back and we predict what your growth rate is going to be for the next year in worship attendance. It's not a perfect tool, but it's a good tool. There's a link to that for the attendance predictor. Look in the show notes. You'll absolutely love it. That's cool. We'll see you soon.